At my son's wedding, his bride told me to leave. I canceled the wedding funding, and you will never guess what happened next. If you like this, please like and drop a comment, and not to subscribe to the YouTube channel for more revenge story like this. Linda Miller was born on July 10th, 1965 in a small town. She spent her childhood helping her family. Over 60 years, she learned to work hard and love deeply. Linda met Michael when she was 20. They married and built a cozy home in Bluebird Estates. Together, they had 2 sons and lived a simple, happy life. Linda worked long days as a school secretary. Evenings, she helped children with reading. She saved every dollar she earned in a red tin can. She dreamed of giving her sons the best. When her older son, Jason, was born, she felt her heart grow. When her younger son, Daniel, arrived, she felt complete. She worked extra jobs to pay for preschool and summer camps. Years passed. Jason grew into a kind young man who loved music. Daniel became a star in the school play and made his mother proud. Linda never missed a game or a recital. One day, Jason called his mother. He said he was engaged to marry Anna. Linda felt joy fill her chest. She hugged the phone and whispered, "This is a dream." Anna was a lovely woman with bright eyes and a warm laugh. She worked as a nurse and loved caring for people. Linda thought her son had found a perfect partner. Jason and Anna chose a Saturday in June for their wedding. Linda offered to pay for the ceremony hall, the flowers, the music, and the cake. She gathered $70,000 in her savings and handed it to Jason with tears of happiness. Spring arrived, and the big day drew near. Linda planned every detail. She picked pink roses and white lilies. She chose a soft silk dress. She hired a string quartet. She hired a friend to bake a 3-tier cake. The morning of the wedding was bright. Sunlight danced on the lawn at Bluebird Estates. Guests gathered under a white canopy. Children ran on the green grass. Birds sang in the trees. Linda sat in a chair, her hands on her lap, smiling at the guests. She felt proud. Her son was about to take a new step in life. She believed this was the best day ever. Then she saw Anna walking down the aisle with her father. Anna's eyes met Linda's and held her gaze. Linda stood up, her heart thumping. She smiled and waved. As Anna reached the front, she stopped. Silence fell like a heavy blanket. The guests held their breath. Linda felt a chill. Anna looked at her coolly and in a clear voice said, "Mother Miller, please leave." Gasps echoed across the lawn. Linda froze. The string quartet faltered. Jason's face turned pale. Flowers shivered in the sudden silence. Linda's heart broke in two. She felt every eye on her. She heard her son whisper, "Mom," but the words caught in his throat. Linda took one step forward, then stopped. Her legs shook like leaves in a storm. Anna turned away and held Jason's hand. The minister cleared his throat. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Linda's red tin can of savings felt heavy in her purse at home. It felt useless now, like spilled sand. A breeze lifted Anna's veil. Linda saw the hurt in her son's eyes. She felt a rage spark inside her chest. Her breath came fast. She clenched her fists at her sides. Anna spoke again, her voice firm. "I do not want your money or your presence here." Linda's skin felt hot. She could taste tears, but they did not come yet. Then, with every eye on her, Linda walked down the aisle. Her heels clicked on the wooden platform. Her head stayed high. She passed rows of shocked faces. The breeze followed her. As she neared the edge of the canopy, she stopped. She lifted her hand and called out, "If you do not want me here, you will have to do without my gift." Her voice echoed. The guests watched as she turned and walked away. Linda's dress trailed behind her. She left the wedding in silence. No one moved to stop her. No one spoke. Outside, she found her car and sat down, heart pounding. She closed her eyes and let the tears fall. Then she wiped them and opened her purse. Inside was a simple red tin can full of her life's work. Linda opened her purse and whispered, "You will regret this." She reached in and removed a stack of envelopes. Each held $5,000 for vendors, caterers, musicians, and a cake maker. She drove away from Bluebird Estates holding that red tin can. Her mind raced. She planned her next move. She knew Anna had made a mistake she could not undo, and she knew her son would see it soon. The sun began to set as Linda turned onto the highway. Her eyes shone with determination. She would not cry tonight. Tonight she was strong. She was a mother who would fight for what was fair. But as the road stretched ahead, her phone buzzed. A single text from Jason appeared. "Mom, please come back." Linda read it twice. She stared at it. She typed a reply, then deleted it. She looked at the tin can and whispered, "No." Then she pressed her foot on the gas and drove into the coming night. An hour later, Linda reached her small house in Maple Hollow Estates. She parked under a street lamp. The light made silver lines in her hair. She sat in silence for a moment. Inside, her 2 sons and her husband waited, unaware of what had happened. She opened the front door. The warm glow of the living room welcomed her. She placed the tin can on the table and turned off her coat. Her husband, Robert, looked up from his book. He smiled but saw the tears in Linda's eyes. He set his book aside. "What happened?" he asked softly. Linda stood tall. Her jaw was set. "I got told to leave," she said. "At Jason's wedding, his bride told me to go." Robert's face fell. He stood and took her hand. Robert held Linda close. "They can't do that," he said. "They need us." Linda nodded. She felt her anger melt into sadness, then into resolve. "I'll fix this," she said. That night, Linda made calls. She called the caterer and canceled the $40,000 she had promised. She called the florist and said she would not pay the $8,000. She called the musician and told him she was sorry, but she could not pay him the $7,000. Every vendor's voice faltered with shock. By midnight, the wedding was in ruins. No food, no flowers, no music. Guests would arrive to chairs alone and empty tables. Linda sat back in her chair and closed her eyes. Her head ached. Then her phone buzzed again. This time it was a photo from Anna. It showed a wilted bouquet on the barren lawn. A single rose lay on the grass. Under it, Anna had written, "You monster." Linda stared at the photo. Her eyes narrowed. "They will see," she whispered. She stood up and walked to the window. The moon shone bright. She looked at the distant lights of Bluebird Estates. A storm rumbled inside her. She clenched her fists. "They will see." An angry wind rattled the window. Lightning flashed in the sky. And in that flash, Linda made her choice. The next morning would bring chaos. But tonight, Linda sat quietly, ready for what came next. Linda's phone glowed with Anna's angry image of a single rose on the wedding lawn. A storm rumbled in the sky and in Linda's heart as she prepared her next move. Linda sat by the window, the photo of the lone rose burning in her mind. Outside, thunder rolled and rain began to fall. Her heart pounded like a drum. She pictured the empty lawn at Bluebird Estates, guests arriving to find chaos. She pictured her son's face, torn between love for his bride and love for his mother. She tasted the fury rising in her throat. Lightning flashed, and she saw her reflection. Determined, fierce, wounded. She rose and paced the room. Each step echoed her resolve. She grabbed her phone and scrolled through the wedding invitation details one more time. The hall rental, the cake deposit, the sound system, all paid by her heart's savings. She tapped out a message to Jason. "I'm sorry you're caught in this. I won't let them erase what we built. Let me handle it." She hit send before regret could stop her. Minutes later, Jason replied, "Mom, please don't make it worse." His plea felt like a knife in her chest, but she pressed on. First, she contacted the hall manager, Mr. Walker. He answered groggily, surprised to hear from her so late. "Mrs. Miller, is everything okay?" he asked. Linda's voice was calm but cold. "I'm afraid I must withdraw my deposit. I want the date freed immediately." There was a pause. "But the contract," he started. "I know," she said, "but circumstances have changed." She hung up. Next, she called the cake baker, Mrs. Delgado at Baker's Haven. Her voice quivered as she spoke. "I'm so sorry, Carla. I have to cancel the order." Carla's confusion turned to disappointment. "Mrs. Miller, I've already baked the tears. I can't." "I understand," Linda said softly, "but please don't deliver it." She ended the call before tears could slip into her voice. One by one, she freed each vendor from their promise. No one bristled. They were used to mothers with big hearts offering kindness. They did not want to criticize a grieving parent. They agreed to refund what they could and hold the rest as credit. By morning, all traces of the wedding were undone. The hall stood empty. The cake tins were stored away. The flowers were unsent back to the greenhouse. Even the musicians were told the gig was off. Bluebird Estates would be silent on that wedding day. Rain still fell, steady and chilling. Linda wrapped herself in a shawl and stared out at the dark sky. She felt the calm before the storm of Jason's reaction. A knock sounded at her door. She opened it to find Daniel, her younger son, eyes red from crying. He held his school backpack in one hand and a notebook in the other. "Mom," he whispered, "I got a call from Anna's sister." She said Dad told her what happened. Linda's breath caught. Daniel's small face was pale. "They think you're cruel," he said. Linda gathered him in her arms. "I love you," she said, "but I can't let anyone treat our family like this." Daniel trembled in her arms. "But Anna hates you," he sobbed. "They all hate you." Linda held him close, feeling each shudder in his body. "Not all of them," she said. "There's always more to the story." Later that morning, Robert returned from work. He'd been on a business trip, but flew back when he heard news. He found Linda in the kitchen making coffee. He set his briefcase down and hugged her gently. "I'm proud of you," he said, "but be careful." Linda nodded, though deep down she knew there was no turning back. An envelope arrived that afternoon with no return address. Inside was a single white glove. It was the same style Anna had worn at the rehearsal dinner, lace with pearl buttons. A note in crisp black ink read, "Stay away." Beneath it, a single line, "Or face worse." Linda stared at the glove. It lay on the kitchen table, like a gauntlet thrown down. She touched it and felt the challenge. She glanced out the window. The rain had stopped, leaving glassy droplets on the leaves. The sky was steel gray, readying for more thunder. She decided to take a step back before striking again. She needed to gather information. She picked up her laptop and began researching Anna. She checked social media, Anna's bridal shower photos, her Instagram posts, her Facebook events. She downloaded them into a folder. Then she looked into Anna's background. Anna's family owned a nursing agency in Silverbrook. They lived in Suncrest Meadows, a small upscale enclave. Linda discovered that Anna's parents, the Taylors, had deep pockets. They donated to local charities and hosted fundraisers. They had influence in the community. Linda sipped her coffee and set a plan. She would not fight money with money. She would fight truth with truth. She would reveal the kindness she had shown and expose the coldness Anna displayed. She would show her son exactly who had betrayed him. She called her friend Marlene, a reporter at the Maple Hollow Gazette. Marlene agreed to meet at the local library to talk. Over tea, Linda laid out her side. Marlene's eyes widened at the photo of the rose and the glove. "This is big," she said. "If I write it, people will see who's cruel." Linda nodded. "I want the world to know the truth." After the meeting, Linda felt a surge of hope. She walked through the quiet streets of Maple Hollow Estates. Spring flowers nodded at her. Birds chirped in the budding trees. It felt like life was carrying on, unaware of the storm raging in her heart. That evening, Jason called. His voice was shaky. "Mom, I heard from Dad. And from Anna's family. They say you ruined everything." Linda took a deep breath. "Jason, I did what I had to. She asked me to leave." He sighed. "I know. But it's tearing me apart." Linda's own voice trembled. "I love you. I want you happy. But you deserve someone who respects your family." He was silent. Finally he said, "I need time." When he hung up, Linda closed her eyes. She felt the ache of loneliness. Her son had become distant, yet she stood firm. She looked at the draft of Marlene's article on her laptop. The headline read, "Bride's Betrayal, Mother's True Gift." She knew publishing it could split the community, but she believed it was right. The next morning, Linda drove to Silverbrook and slipped the printed article under the door of the Taylor's home. She left no note. She wanted Anna's family to read her words in private. As she backed away, she saw a neighbor watching. She waved and drove off. Back at home, she received a call from Marlene. "They saw it," Marlene said quietly. "They're furious." Linda's heart fluttered. "Good," she replied. "Let them feel it." She hung up and checked her phone. No message from Jason. Linda spent the afternoon tending her rose garden. She pruned branches and pulled weeds. Each snip of the shears released tension. Sunlight broke through the clouds and warmed her face. She inhaled the scent of earth and flowers. For a moment, she felt peace. Then her phone buzzed. She opened it to see a voice message from Anna's father. "Mrs. Miller, this is William Taylor. Your actions are unacceptable. You have one chance to retract this, or else." His tone was angry and threatening. Linda's fingers tightened around the phone. She replayed the message. A bead of sweat rolled down her temple. That night, a black SUV parked outside her house at 10 p.m. She watched from her bedroom window as figures in dark suits stepped out. They carried briefcases and flashlights. She recognized one as Mr. Walker, the hall manager. He had been polite, but here he looked furious. Her heart thundered. The Taylors had hired people to intimidate her. She slipped out the back door and ran to her car. As she drove away, headlights chased her down the street. She floored the accelerator, tires squealing. She raced to the highway and didn't look back until she reached the safety of a well-lit gas station. She parked under the bright canopy and panted for breath. Rain started again, drumming on the car roof. She dialed Robert. He answered immediately. "Meet me at the cabin," she said. "Now." He replied, "I'm on my way." In the distance, lightning split the sky. Linda looked out at the dark horizon and felt the electricity in her bones. She knew the next move would be dangerous, but she was ready. An hour later, Robert arrived. He held a flashlight and 2 backpacks. "Let's go," he said. They drove into the night toward their old family cabin in Pine Glen Hollow, miles from town. As they turned off the main road, headlights approached behind them. Robert slammed on the brakes. They ducked down in the car. The headlights passed and disappeared into the darkness. Linda exhaled slowly. "They're watching," she whispered. Robert nodded. "But we're together," he said. He handed her 1 backpack. "In here are documents, bank statements, vendor receipts, email logs. Everything we need." Linda opened the pack and saw folders neatly labeled. Contracts, cancellations, correspondence. She smiled grimly. "We have the proof." Suddenly, a loud thud rocked the car. A rock smashed the windshield. Glass spiderwebbed. Rain sprayed inside. Linda screamed. They ducked lower as another rock shattered the glass further. Linda's hand flew to the door handle. "We have to get out now," she shouted. Robert started the engine, and they sped forward, leaving the cabin road behind. Water splashed from puddles. The SUV's headlights appeared behind them again, closer this time. Robert turned onto a side road. The gravel crunched under the tires. Trees loomed on both sides. The SUV followed. Linda gripped the dashboard as the rocks struck again, cracking side windows. Then a final loud bang. The rock hit the back of their car with a sickening thump. The vehicle lurched. Linda's heart stopped, and then everything went black. An unknown assailant shattered Linda's windshield with rocks, forcing her and Robert into a desperate, rain-soaked escape through dark roads, pursued by a black SUV intent on stopping them. Rain pounded the car as Linda and Robert hurtled down the gravel road. Glass crunched under their tires and water sprayed across the dashboard. Robert gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white. Linda pressed against the seat, her heart hammering in her ears. Suddenly, their headlights caught a shape in the road. Robert slammed on the brakes. Tires screeched, and the car spun before skidding to a halt in a shallow ditch. The SUV behind them skidded too, but kept moving, disappearing around a bend. Linda's head hit the side window, and everything went dark. When she came to, her chest ached. Robert sat beside her, breathing hard, his face streaked with rain and blood from a cut on his forehead. He turned to her. "Are you okay?" he asked, voice trembling. Linda blinked, then pushed the door open. Cold rain soaked her coat. She climbed out and kneeled beside the car. The windshield was a spider's web of cracks. One front tire was flat, and the other was shredded. The engine still ran, idling low. Robert slipped out too. "We can't stay here," he said. "They'll be back." He looked down the dark road. No headlights, only the blur of rain on trees. Linda nodded. "We need help." She pulled her phone from her pocket. No signal. She turned it on and off. Nothing. The rain muted every sound. They surveyed their surroundings. Ahead lay the old logging road to the east. Behind was the main cabin path. The only light came from their dying headlights and flickers of lightning above. Robert picked up a heavy branch from the side of the road. "We'll defend ourselves if they come," he said. Linda brushed wet hair from her face. She looked at her husband's determined expression. Despite the danger, she felt a surge of comfort. They were in this together. They climbed out and began walking toward the logging road. The rain fell so hard it felt like needles on their skin. Their shoes squelched in mud. Branches scratched their coats. Every shadow looked like a man with a rock. After 10 minutes, they reached a narrow clearing. Here the trees opened to a muddy field. In the distance, they saw a dim light, probably from a farmhouse. Linda pointed. "There," she said. "Let's go." They trudged across the field, water rising around their ankles. The clearing felt endless. Each step weighed them down. Robert gripped Linda's hand. "Almost there," he whispered. Then, behind them, a rumble of engines. Linda froze. She turned and saw the SUV cresting the hill, headlights blazing. Its engine roared as it aimed straight for them. Robert shoved Linda behind a fallen pine. The SUV's tires churned mud as it raced across the field. Linda and Robert crouched low, hearts pounding. The headlights swept over them, missing by inches, and the car sped past. The cliff of trees swallowed it up. Linda's breath caught. She looked at Robert. "We can't outrun them," she said. He nodded, eyes fierce. "We fight if we have to." He hefted the branch. They crept forward, keeping low. The house light grew brighter. As they neared, they saw a small wooden farmhouse, its paint peeling and windows dark. A porch light flickered above the door. Linda's hope rose. Robert approached the door. He raised his knuckles to knock. Before he could, the door swung open, and an old man stood there in a plaid shirt and jeans. He held a shotgun pointed at them. Linda and Robert froze. The man's eyes narrowed. "Who are you? What are you doing on my land?" His voice was gruff. Linda held up her hands. "Please, sir," she said. "Our car broke down. We need help. Please let us in." The old man eyed them, then lowered the shotgun slightly. "Come in quick. Storm's dangerous." He stepped aside. Inside, the farmhouse smelled of wood smoke and coffee. A fire burned in the hearth. The old man motioned to a chair. "Sit." He went to pour coffee. Linda sank into the chair, soaked and shivering. Robert stood by the fireplace, warming his hands. The old man returned with 2 steaming mugs. He handed one to Linda. "I'm Hank," he said. "You two are in Pine Glen Hollow territory. Not many strangers come here." Linda took a sip. The coffee was strong and bitter. She felt warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you," she said. "I'm Linda Miller, and this is my husband, Robert. We were attacked. Rocks smashed our car. We think someone is after us." Hank sat opposite them, eyes dark. "Who'd want to hurt you?" he asked. Linda hesitated. She glanced at Robert. "It's complicated," she said. "It involves my family and some very angry people. We need to call the police." She held out her phone. Hank shook his head. "No signal out here," he said. "The nearest tower's miles away. But don't worry. I'll drive you to town in the morning." He stood. "You can sleep on the couch. Get some rest." Linda and Robert exchanged relieved looks. They followed Hank to a small bedroom. The old sofa looked lumpy, but it was dry. They lay down, exhausted. In the dim light, Linda spoke softly. "Robert, what if they're paid by Anna's family?" Her voice trembled. Robert turned to her. "Then we'll have proof to show Jason," he said. "We have the folders. And Hank's witness. We'll clear this." Linda nodded, comforted by his confidence. She closed her eyes, trying to rest. Outside, rain tapped the roof. The wind moaned through gaps in the walls. Morning light seeped through the curtains. Linda awoke to birdsong and the smell of bacon frying. She sat up on the couch, stiff and sore. Robert was already up, seated at a small table with Hank, eating breakfast. Hank looked up. "Morning," he said. "Coffee?" Linda rose and stretched. "Thank you," she said. She joined them at the table. The farmhouse kitchen was modest, wooden cabinets, a cast-iron skillet on the stove, mismatched plates. Over bacon and eggs, Hank listened as Linda explained everything. The wedding, the cancellation of funds, the threats, the attack. His face grew darker with each detail. "They won't stop," he said when she finished. "You need evidence to scare them off." Robert slid the folder across the table. "We have receipts, emails, messages." He tapped the top. "And you, Hank, saw their SUV." Hank nodded. "I know the make, late model, black headlights. And I heard them talk." He paused. "They said to shut you up." Linda's stomach churned. "We need to get this to the police." She looked at Robert. Hank frowned. "The sheriff's department is slow out here. But I know someone, old Deputy Carlson. He owes me a favor." He stood. "Come on. Let's go." They stepped outside into steady rain. Hank's Chevy pickup idled in the yard. He climbed in and Linda and Robert followed. The roads were slick mud. The pickup jolted and bounced on the ruts. After 20 minutes, they reached a small station on the edge of town. Hank parked and led them inside. The sheriff's office was quiet, just a desk, a map on the wall, and a phone ringing in the back. An older deputy in uniform came out. Hank spoke softly to him. The deputy's eyes widened as he read the folders. "You're right," he said. "This is serious." He picked up the phone. "Sheriff, I need you back here." Linda felt relief and dread mix. She had hope, but she knew the Taylors had power. She watched the deputy dial. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the office. The front window exploded inward. Shards of glass flew across the room. A masked figure leapt through the broken window, carrying a gun. People screamed. Deputy Carlson shouted, "Get down!" Linda and Robert slammed to the floor. Hank shoved them behind the desk. The masked man fired a shot into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. The deputy dove for cover, pulling his pistol. The masked man aimed at him. "Hands off," he snarled. "This doesn't concern you." Linda pressed her head against the floor. Rain from the shattered window dripped on her hair. She felt Robert's hand on hers. Heart pounding. She realized the Taylors or their agents had come here too. They would stop at nothing. The masked gunman banged the desk with the butt of his rifle. Papers fluttered to the floor. "Remove those folders," he barked. Deputy Carlson whispered to Linda, "Stay low. I'll distract him." Linda closed her eyes, bracing for what would happen next. The room echoed with thunder outside, and inside, a new storm had begun. A masked gunman burst into the sheriff's office, demanding Linda's evidence and turning the fight into a deadly showdown. The gunman's shout still echoed in the sheriff's office as Linda pressed her cheek against the cold tile floor. Dust fell from the ceiling, and the broken window let in a cold gust of wind that stung her face. Robert lay beside her, one arm over her back, his other hand pressed against the deputy's radio. Hank huddled behind the desk, clutching his own phone. The masked man stood over Deputy Carlson, rifle trained on him. "Give me those folders now," he growled. His voice rattled like thunder. Deputy Carlson's eyes were wide, but he didn't move. The gunman barked again, and Carlson, carefully, pulled the folders from his coat pocket and tossed them onto the desk. Linda's heart slammed. Those documents held every email, receipt, and recording of Anna's family's threats. If the gunman got away with them, no one could prove what really happened. The gunman grabbed the folders and tucked them under his arm. He spun toward the broken window, ready to leap out. Then a crackle on Deputy Carlson's radio. "Sheriff's backup on the way. Hold your position." The gunman froze for a split second. Linda held her breath. Then he jumped through the shattered glass and fell to the ground outside. The rain pounded his jacket as he disappeared into the night. Sirens wailed in the distance. Hank let out a shaky sigh and helped Linda and Robert to their feet. Deputy Carlson dusted off his uniform and picked up the rifle. "He got away," he said quietly, "but we have his fingerprints on the weapon, and I'm sure we can track him." Linda wrapped her arms around Robert. Her chest felt heavy with relief and dread. "Thank you," she whispered to the deputy and to Hank. "You saved our lives." Deputy Carlson nodded. "We'll get him. Let's head back to the station and give our statements." He led them to his car. The rain had stopped, and the moon peeked through clouds, casting silver light on wet pavement. At the station, they sat at a long wooden table in a small, bright room. The sheriff and two other deputies listened as Linda told the story again. The wedding, the threats, the cancellation of funds, the article, the rocks, the cabin, the farmhouse, and now the shooting. Robert handed over the folders. "This is everything we have," he said. The sheriff flipped through the documents, methodically. He looked up at Linda. "I'll assign a detective to your case. He'll gather more evidence, review these records, and track the gunman. For now, you should stay somewhere safe." Linda exchanged a glance with Robert. She thought of their home in Maple Hollow Estates, where her rose garden had been damaged by the rain but still stood. She thought of their sons waiting at home, hurt and confused. Daniel must be worried sick. Jason must be torn between families. "We'll find somewhere safe," she said. That night, the sheriff offered them a room at the station to rest. They agreed. A deputy walked them to a quiet office that had been turned into a makeshift bedroom. Linda and Robert lay on the cot, exhausted. The walls were thin. They heard muffled voices in the hallway and the distant hum of the refrigerator. Robert wrapped an arm around Linda. "We survived," he said softly. "Tomorrow we start fighting back." Linda nodded and closed her eyes, but sleep did not come easily. The memory of the gunman's voice and the flash of his rifle haunted her thoughts. Early morning light filtered through a small window. Linda woke to the smell of coffee from the main office. She dressed in dry clothes the sheriff had provided and brushed her hair. Robert looked up from a pile of papers on the desk. "I made lists," he said. "I reached out to Marlene, the reporter. She wants to run a follow-up story about the attack and the threats. She thinks the community will demand answers." Linda felt hope. Public pressure might force Anna's family to back down. The deputy knocked and entered with breakfast trays. "Coffee, eggs, and toast," he said. "Sheriff says you two can go home today, but you might want to lay low for a while." He nodded to the sheriff, who stood behind him. "We've got patrols checking your neighborhood. We'll send an officer to your house." Linda smiled gratefully. "Thank you." She and Robert ate quickly, then gathered their things. The sheriff handed them 2 police escorts in separate cars. "We'll drop you off together, but stay inside until we call," he said. Back in Maple Hollow Estates, the streets were quiet. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains as the 2 patrol cars led Linda's SUV down the boulevard. The rose garden at her front yard had broken stems, but the bushes still bore blossoms of pink and white. Linda remembered tending them yesterday, slicing away dead branches. Today they stood battered but alive. Robert unlocked the door and switched on the porch light. The hallway inside was dark. They stepped in. The house was heavy with silence. Linda flicked on the living room light. The red tin can sat on the coffee table unopened. It had grown dusty. "I'll make us tea," Linda said. She went to the kitchen. Robert followed and closed the door behind them. He leaned against the counter. "Do you think they'll come after us again?" he asked. Linda filled the kettle and set it on the stove. "Maybe," she said, "but now we have the sheriff's protection and the paper behind us." She poured hot water into mugs. "We have each other, and the truth is on our side." Robert smiled weakly. "I hope Jason sees it that way soon." He reached for Linda's hand. She squeezed it, then looked around the kitchen. Family photos on the fridge, Daniel's backpack by the door, her old recipe cards in the drawer. This was their life. She would not let anyone destroy it. They drank tea quietly. Outside, the patrol cars sat under street lamps. The deputies took turns checking inside and speaking with neighbors. The sun rose higher, and the wind rustled the oak tree in front of the house. By midday, the sheriff called. "All clear for now," he said. "We caught the gunman's fingerprints at the cabin and the office. We're closing in." Linda exhaled. "Thank you." She ended the call and turned to Robert. "Let's call the boys." Robert dialed Daniel first. Daniel answered on the first ring. "Mom." His voice sounded tired. "You're home." "Yes, sweetheart," Linda said. "We're safe." Daniel sighed and said, "Can you come pick me up from school? I can't face Anna's friends after what happened." Linda hugged Robert. "We'll be there in 10 minutes." They drove to Daniel's middle school in Sunshine Ridge Estates. Daniel climbed in the back seat. His cheeks were red from crying. He wrapped his arms around his mother. "I'm so glad you're okay," he whispered. Linda stroked his hair. "I'm okay, Daniel. We'll make things right. I promise." Next, they went to Jason's apartment in Elmwood Heights. Jason opened the door with a suitcase in hand. He had been packing, saying he didn't know where to go. His eyes were red, his shirt wrinkled. He didn't speak at first, just stared at his mother and father. Linda stepped forward. "Jason, we're so sorry you got caught in this." He looked down, voice tight. "I'm leaving. I can't stay here while this goes on." Robert put a hand on his shoulder. "Your family," he said. "We need you." Jason pulled away. "I love you, Mom, but right now I need space." Linda's heart ached, but she held her ground. "Whenever you're ready, we're here." He nodded, then closed the door. Linda and Robert got back in the car. Daniel peered out the window. "Will he come back?" he asked. Linda reached into her purse and pulled out a small notebook. Inside were prayers, plans, and ideas. She showed him the page titled Family Reunion. Underneath, she had written, "True heart wins." She tapped the words. "He will," she said, "because he knows you and I are here for him." As they drove home, the sky darkened once more. Clouds gathered overhead and distant thunder rumbled. Daniel shivered. "Not again," he whispered. Linda glanced at Robert. He nodded gravely. When they pulled into their driveway, they saw flickering lights through their living room window. Linda's heart stopped. She rushed to the front door, Robert close behind. They flung it open. Fire leapt from the hearth, except the hearth hadn't been lit. Flames crackled around the coffee table where the red tin can lay. Thick black smoke curled toward the ceiling. The spring flowers they had planted at the doorstep burst into tiny sparks of flame. Linda screamed. Daniel gasped and fell against Robert. He scooped his son up as Linda dashed inside with a wet towel. She smothered a small blaze near the can, but inside the fire had caught. The smoke was choking. She coughed, tears stinging her eyes. Robert ran outside and grabbed the hose. He turned the nozzle on, water hissing across the flames. The ancient oak in front of the house groaned as rain began to fall, as if the sky was crying for them. The water doused the fire, but charred spots remained on the floorboards, and the tin can's red paint bubbled. Linda sank to her knees, heart racing. Her safe haven, her home and her mother's gift tin had been attacked. The Taylors, or whoever sent the gunman, had struck again. She looked at Robert through the haze of smoke. His eyes were fierce with anger. Behind him, Daniel, wrapped in a blanket, stared in shock. Outside, the patrol car's lights spun silently, but no one moved to help. Linda rose, pulling Daniel close. "They won't win," she whispered. "We start again." She looked down at the tin can, now blackened on one side. Its lid lay on the floor beside it. Thunder crashed overhead, and in that flash of lightning, Linda saw Anna's face on every petal of her ruined rose garden. She clenched her fists. "This ends now," she vowed. Flames engulfed Linda's living room, attacking the family's home and the precious tin can as thunder rumbled above. Another violent blow in the battle for truth and justice. Smoke still curled from the charred floorboards when Linda stepped back into the ruined living room the next morning. Sunlight slanted through the window, lighting up ashes on the carpet. She sighed as she surveyed the damage. The red tin can lay on its side, blackened and dented. Part of the wall was scorched, and the kitchen doorframe had blistered paint. Robert knelt beside the can and picked it up gently. "It's bent," he said softly, turning it over in his hands, but the lid stayed inside. He pried off the top and tipped the tin. Inside were a few singed dollar bills and 3 envelopes, only slightly scorched. Linda's heart lifted. "Thank goodness," she whispered. "Not everything is gone." Daniel stood in the doorway, clutching his favorite stuffed bear. His eyes were wide with fright. "Mom, the fire scared me," he said in a small voice. Linda dropped to her knees and pulled him close. "I know, sweetheart, but we're safe now." She hugged him tight. "We'll fix this house together." Over the next 2 days, neighbors from Maple Hollow Estates brought cleaning supplies, fresh paint, and old blankets. Mrs. Clarkson from next door offered to watch Daniel after school. Mr. Patel down the street brought new floorboards for the burned room. Linda and Robert worked side by side, scraping soot, repainting walls, and replacing broken glass. During this time, Linda made a short video on her phone for the local news. She stood in front of her house, the repaired porch behind her, and a fresh coat of white paint visible on the walls. "I'm Linda Miller," she said, voice steady. "My family's home was attacked twice for speaking the truth, but we will not be silenced. I hope our community stands with us against hate and fear." She posted it on the Maple Hollow Gazette's Facebook page, and within hours it had hundreds of shares and supportive comments. That evening, Jason called. His voice sounded softer than before. "Mom, I saw your video," he said. "You were so brave." Linda felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you, Jason. We're okay, thanks to your dad and our neighbors." He hesitated, then said, I'm sorry I left so fast. I wanted to help." Linda smiled through her tears. "You're here now. That's what matters." He promised to visit the next day. True to his word, Jason arrived with a toolbox and a fresh paint can. Together, the 3 of them sanded door frames and filled nail holes. Daniel painted a little section of the wall bright blue, his gift to the family. Laughter returned to the house, mingling with the scent of fresh paint and sawdust. By the end of the weekend, the living room looked almost new. The scorch marks were gone, replaced by smooth, pale walls. The tin can stood on the mantel, half cleaned but proudly displayed. Linda polished it and slipped the lid back on. "This can hold my dreams," she told Daniel, "and nothing can destroy that." With the house rebuilding underway, Linda turned her focus back to the case. She met again with Deputy Carlson at the station. He showed her sketches of the masked gunman based on witnesses at the cabin and the office. He said the fingerprints had matched a name, Bradley Monroe, a man with a small criminal record for intimidation. Monroe was known to take jobs from wealthy clients who wanted dirt on rivals. Linda's stomach knotted. "We need to know who hired him," she said. The deputy nodded. "We're tracing his last phone calls and bank transfers. I'll let you know once we have more." That afternoon, Linda hosted a small gathering in her living room. Marlene, the reporter, came with a photographer. Friends from church, neighbors, and a few parents of Daniel's classmates filled the room. Marlene pressed record as Linda spoke to the camera again. "I want to thank everyone who helped us rebuild our home," Linda said. "But more than that, I want to thank you for standing against cruelty. My sons deserve a world where kindness matters more than money. Please speak out whenever you see injustice." She smiled, and the crowd applauded. After the gathering, Marlene approached Linda. "Your story inspired many," she said. "People who were silent are now calling the Taylors and asking questions." Marlene showed Linda a stack of voicemail printouts. Neighbors confronting the Taylors, donors retracting their support, and local shopkeepers refusing to service Anna's family. Linda felt the tide turning. That night, the family sat down to dinner in the newly repaired dining room. Linda served spaghetti and meatballs, Robert's specialty, and Daniel's favorite garlic bread. Jason poured juice for everyone. They ate and talked about simple things: school tests, a funny video online, a new book Linda was reading. After dinner, Jason stood and proposed a toast. He raised his glass and said, "To family stronger than fear." They clinked glasses, laughter echoing. Linda looked around the table and felt warmth fill her chest. For the first time in weeks, she felt peace. But as she cleared the dishes, a knock sounded at the door. Robert frowned. Who could that be? He opened it to reveal a small package on the doorstep. No name, no return address, just a plain brown box. Linda took the package inside and set it on the kitchen table. She hesitated before opening it. Daniel stood behind her, eyes curious. She untapped the top and lifted the flaps. Inside lay a single red rose, fresh, its petals velvety, and beneath it a thin envelope. Linda's breath caught. She extracted the note and read it aloud. "You thought you could rebuild and hide. Next time, the pieces will be yours." Jason and Robert stiffened. Daniel clutched his mother's leg. The rose was a cruel reminder of how it had all begun at his wedding, now turned into a threat, delivered straight to her home. Thunder rumbled outside, low and menacing. The family sank into stunned silence. Linda pressed her hand to her chest, feeling her pulse thunder. She looked at her husband and sons and knew they were safe, for now. But that danger was closing in again. In that moment, the simple dinner table and rebuilt living room felt like fragile islands in a rising storm. Linda's mind raced. The Taylors, or whoever backed them, had escalated. They were sending threats by mail, signaling they could strike at any time. She folded the note carefully and placed it in the red tin can. Then she looked at her family, their faces lit by the soft kitchen light, full of trust and love. "We'll get through this," she said, voice firm. "They won't break us." But outside, the lightning split the sky, and the rain began to fall in heavy sheets. The rose on the table drooped, its petals darkening as water dripped from the window above. And in that flash of lightning, Linda saw a figure standing across the street, watching her home, unmoving, a dark shape in the downpour. A threatening package arrived at Linda's front door containing a red rose and a chilling note, and a mysterious figure appeared across the street in the pouring rain. The rain poured down in sheets as Linda pressed her forehead against the cool window pane. She watched the dark shape across the street, an unmoving silhouette beneath a flickering street lamp. Her heart pounded like a drum. She felt Robert's hand on her shoulder and turned to him. "He's still there," she whispered. Robert nodded, his jaw tight. "I see him." Inside, Jason gathered Daniel close on the couch. They stared at the front yard, where the solitary figure stood, drenched but silent. The red rose on the kitchen table trembled in its vase, petals shedding tiny droplets of water on the wood. The note Linda had placed in the red tin can lay beside it, its edges damp. Linda took a deep breath. "We can't let him scare us," she said. Her voice was steady, though her hands shook. She looked at her family, her reason to fight. "We stay together," she continued. "We lock all doors and windows. We call the sheriff." Robert moved to the phone and dialed the sheriff's office. The line clicked and rang. He spoke in low tones, giving their address and describing the watcher outside. As they waited, Linda turned on every light in the house. Lamps glowed in every room, casting warm circles on the walls. She closed thick drapes, securing them with clamps. Robert checked the locks on the doors and windows twice. Jason stood guard at the top of the stairs, peering through a peephole. Daniel clutched his stuffed bear, hiding behind his mother's skirts. Minutes later, 2 sheriff's patrol cars pulled up under the rain. Officers stepped into the light, rain beating on their uniforms. They walked around the house, shining flashlights into bushes and corners. The figure in the street was gone. The street lamp flickered and went dark, leaving only the scattered lights of the patrol cars. An officer rapped on the door. Linda opened it. "It's clear," he said. "No one here but you. But we'll drive by every hour tonight." She thanked him and closed the door. The officers climbed back into their cars and drove off, their lights receding into the distance. Linda exhaled and turned to her family. They gathered in the living room by the fireplace, where she had rebuilt the hearth 2 chapters ago. The smell of fresh paint and wood polish still lingered. Robert lit the fire, and flames licked the logs, filling the room with gentle warmth. Jason sank onto the couch. "Why are they doing this?" he asked, voice small. "We never hurt anyone." Linda sat beside him. "They want to scare us," she explained. "They think if they make us afraid, we'll stop. But we have truth and love on our side." She hugged him. "I know it feels scary, but we have each other, and that's stronger than any fear." Daniel climbed into Linda's lap. He looked up at her with big eyes. "Will they come back?" he asked softly. Linda kissed the top of his head. "I don't know," she said, "but we are ready." She pointed to Robert, then Jason. "We all stand together, no matter what." The fire crackled and the rain pattered against the windows. The family sat close, drawing comfort from each other. For a moment, the terror of the watcher and the fire seemed a long way off. Linda thought of her rose garden, still standing, petals wet and roots deep. She thought of the tin can, now half repaired and half battered. Every scratch and dent told her they had survived, and they would keep surviving. As the clock ticked past midnight, Linda led her family to bed. She tucked Daniel into his small bedroom, kissed his cheek, and told him she loved him. He fell asleep quickly, comforted by her presence. She and Robert climbed into their own bed. They lay close, listening to the wind moan outside. Before sleep claimed her, Linda whispered to Robert, "We need a plan." He squeezed her hand. "First light, we meet with the detective. Then we get that sketch of the watcher made into a flyer. We share it with the community. Someone must know who that is." Linda nodded, eyes closing. "Yes, we'll find him." But sleep was elusive. She lay awake as the storm raged. Lightning flashed and thunder shook the house. In every crash, Linda heard Anna's voice saying, "Stay away." She shivered, then resolved to turn fear into action. At dawn, the storm had passed. The sky was pale gray, and puddles glimmered on the road. Linda drank strong coffee at the kitchen table, the red tin came between her hands. She counted the envelopes inside. Still safe, a sign that small kindnesses endure. She read the note again. "Next time the pieces will be yours." She folded it and placed it in her pocket. Robert joined her with 2 mugs. He sat down and handed her one. "We're doing good," he said. "We have evidence. We have support. We have each other." His calm steadied her. She sipped her coffee and felt warmth spread through her chest. Jason entered wearing a windbreaker and jeans. "I'm heading to school," he said. "I'll talk to my friends. I want them to keep an eye out for that man." He took a bite of toast and left, his steps echoing down the hallway. Robert and Linda finished their coffee. The house felt quiet and solid. She stood and stretched. "Let's go," she said. They left the front door open and stepped into the bright morning light. Police cars were parked at the curb, lights off but ready. Detective Lopez stood by the patrol car holding a sketch pad. Detective Lopez was a tall woman with sharp eyes and a kind smile. She greeted them. "Morning," she said. "I have the sketch of your watcher." She handed it to Linda. The pencil drawing showed a man in a dark hooded raincoat, his features partially hidden, but the strong jawline and the shape of his nose were clear. The detective pointed to a small tattoo on his wrist in the sketch. 3 dots in a triangle. "A witness at the station remembered seeing it," she said. "We can use that detail." Linda studied the sketch. She felt a chill. This was the man whose eyes had followed her through the window. "Is this him?" she asked. Detective Lopez nodded. "We think so." Linda took out her phone and snapped a photo of the sketch. "I want to print flyers," she said. "We'll post them around town." Detective Lopez agreed. "I'll send you a digital copy by email. We can also put it on the Gazette's website." Linda smiled. "Let's do it." They walked back inside. Robert opened his laptop and connected to the community bulletin board website. Linda drafted a simple post, "Missing person, wanted for harassment and threats." She uploaded the sketch and wrote a clear description of the incident dates and a reward for information. Within minutes, dozens of comments appeared. Neighbors offering tips, teachers volunteering to print flyers, local shopkeepers promising to hang the picture in their windows. Linda felt a surge of hope. She turned to Detective Lopez. "Thank you," she said. "This makes me feel we're not alone." The detective nodded. "We're on your side. We'll patrol more often." Detective Lopez left, and Linda and Robert surveyed the bustle online. They printed flyers on their home printer, simple black and white copies, and bundled them with thumbtacks and tape. Linda loaded a backpack with the materials. Robert grabbed his jacket and keys. "Ready?" he asked. Linda zipped her coat. "Let's walk the neighborhood." So they set out, posting flyers on light poles and community boards. Neighbors stepped outside to help, pointing out spots where the flyer would be seen by more people. At Sunshine Ridge Estates Park, they hung a flyer on the bulletin board near the playground. A young mother read it and nodded. "I saw a man like this near the tennis courts 2 nights ago," she said. "He asked me for directions. He had a tattoo like that." Linda's heart leapt. "Thank you," she said. "That helps." The mother smiled, then offered to join the search later. They continued to Elmwood Heights, Pine Glen Hollow, and Maple Hollow Estates. At each stop they posted flyers, talked with neighbors, and answered questions. By mid-morning, the sketch was everywhere. Back at home, they found a voicemail from Deputy Carlson. "We got a tip." A convenience store clerk on Route 12 saw a man matching the sketch buying a prepaid phone yesterday. He paid in cash. The clerk gave the man a shopping bag that looks like the one from the station. "We're following up." Robert grinned. "We're closing in." Linda felt relief, but also caution. They still had threats to face, and the Taylors had deep pockets. Yet the community's support gave her strength. She hugged Robert. "We're doing this," she said. They seated themselves at the kitchen table once more. The red tin can stood in the center, a symbol of survival. Linda opened it and pulled out one of the nearly untouched envelopes. Inside was an invitation envelope, Michael's old wedding invitation to her and Robert hand-addressed. She smiled and set it aside. Then the phone rang. It was the sheriff's office. They had located Bradley Monroe at a motel outside town. Officers were on their way. Linda's pulse hammered in her ears. She thanked them and hung up. At that moment, the front door burst open. Linda and Robert stood, startled, as Anna's mother, Mrs. Taylor, stormed in. She wore an expensive coat, drenched from the rain, and her eyes blazed with fury. "You thought you'd destroy us and come back here to play house," she spat. "You ruined our family's name. Now you will pay." She reached into her purse and pulled out a small vial. "This is for you." She hurled it at Linda's feet. Linda's stomach dropped as the vial shattered on the floor. A white powder puffed into the air, filling the room with a sweet, sickly smell. Mrs. Taylor turned and fled through the open door before they could react. Linda coughed, her eyes watering. Robert grabbed a towel and covered his nose. Daniel, who had been playing in the next room, ran in crying, clutching his throat. Jason threw his backpack down and shut the door. Through the haze of powder, Linda saw her family coughing and gasping. She grabbed them and herded them outside, rain washing the white powder off their coats. She shouted for Robert to call 911. As she watched the powder dissolve in the rain, she realized the war had reached a new level. The Taylors were willing to use poison to silence her. Fear flashed in her mind, but then melted into determination. Linda raised her head to the dark sky. Lightning split the clouds above, and thunder rolled like a warning. She clutched her family close and vowed, no matter what they did, she would protect her family and bring the truth to light. Mrs. Taylor burst into Linda's home and threw a vial of powder, poisoning the room and attacking the family, escalating the fight to a dangerous new level under a stormy sky. Detective Lopez arrived at dawn with Deputy Carlson and 2 uniformed officers. They had spent the night guarding the family after the powder attack. Linda met them at her front door, weary but resolute. She led them into the kitchen, where the tiny glass vial lay shattered on the floor, tiny white crystals dissolving in a puddle of spilled water. Daniel stood beside her, clutching his stuffed bear. Jason held Robert's hand. Detective Lopez bent down and scooped up the remaining powder for analysis. "We'll know exactly what this is soon," she said. "For now, I want all of you to stay close. We have a plan." She explained quietly that they had found Monroe hiding in a cheap motel on Route 12. The prepaid phone he bought matched the one seen at the station. Officers had his room, key, and photos of his muddy boots near the shattered window at the cabin. Linda felt relief flood her. At least they were catching the hired thug. She and Robert exchanged a look of hope. Maybe now the threats would stop. The officers piled into 2 patrol cars. Detective Lopez handed Linda a file. "Here's the warrant for Monroe's arrest," she said. "We'll go together." Linda clutched the paper. It felt like a weight lifting off her chest. She gathered her family in the living room. "We're going to catch the man who attacked us," she said. "I want you all to be safe. Please stay here and lock the doors." Daniel nodded, eyes wide but trusting. Jason hugged his brother and mother. Robert kissed Linda's cheek. "Be careful," he said. They drove in the detective's SUV toward Route 12. Rain had stopped, leaving the air fresh and cool. The sky was pale blue with soft clouds. Linda looked out the window, imagining Monroe sitting in his motel room, maybe sleeping off his fear. She felt a flicker of anger. He had terrified her family. Now, justice would catch him. Arriving at the motel, the officers spread out. Detective Lopez knocked on the door. When there was no answer, She held up the warrant and the key. Officers stepped in quietly. They found Monroe half-dressed on the bed, a map and a small bag of cash on the table. He woke with a groan of surprise. "Bradley Monroe, you are under arrest for harassment, assault, and attempted poisoning of the Miller family," Detective Lopez said. She cuffed his hands behind his back. Monroe's eyes darted around the room, panic on his face. He begged for mercy, but the officers read him his rights and marched him out. Linda watched from the window as the black-hooded figure in orange jail garb was led to the squad car. His head hung low. The sight felt like the first victory in a long war. Back at home, Detective Lopez set the file on the kitchen table. "We have Monroe," she said. "We'll question him today." We also identified the lab report. The powder was harmless but intended to scare. It was laundry starch mixed with cleaning chemicals. Nothing deadly, but enough to cause coughing and panic. Linda closed her eyes and exhaled. "They're desperate," she said. "They wanted to frighten us." Detective Lopez nodded. "Exactly. We'll keep him locked up. But we need to find out who hired him, who paid him. Monroe will talk when he sees the evidence against him." Late that afternoon, Monroe sat in an interrogation room. Detective Lopez and Deputy Carlson questioned him. His face was sweaty, his dark jacket still damp. He admitted he was paid $10,000 in cash, but he claimed he did not know who hired him. He only saw a woman's car in a parking lot, took an envelope, and did the job. He described her car as a black sedan with silver trim. He scratched his neck and refused further comment without a lawyer. Detective Lopez slammed the table. "We have witnesses who saw you meet a woman late at night by the power station. We have your fingerprints on the vial and your boots in the field. We can prove you were there." Monroe's eyes widened. He chuckled nervously. "I swear I don't know her name. She had on gloves. She said she was a friend of the bride." Linda listened through the one-way glass. Her blood ran cold. A friend of the bride. Anna's family had hired him. She turned to Detective Lopez. "Is there anything you can do to force him to talk?" Lopez shook her head. "He can stay silent, but we can search for the woman in the black sedan. We have surveillance cameras near the power station." Robert joined them behind Linda. He slipped her hand into his. "We'll find her," he said. "We have the power of the law on our side now." That evening, the family sat together at the dinner table. Everything felt surreal. Monroe behind bars, the power of the sheriff's department hunting Anna's family. Yet they were hungry, tired, and shaken. Linda served chicken soup with fresh bread. They ate in silence, the memory of the powder still fresh. Daniel asked, "Is it over?" Linda smiled gently. "The man who hurt us is caught, but we still need to find who sent him." Jason set down his spoon. "I can talk to my fiancé's friends," he said quietly. "Maybe they saw something." Linda looked at him with pride. "That's a good idea." Over the next day, Detective Lopez and her team revisited the power station. They reviewed surveillance footage from nearby businesses. A security camera at the gas station across the road captured a black sedan pulling in at midnight. A woman wearing a long coat and gloves got out, opened the trunk, and placed a small box inside. She drove away 10 minutes later. Her hair was tucked under a scarf, and the plate number was partially obscured, ending in 59. Detective Lopez traced the plate to a rental agency. They found a record. The sedan was rented by Elisa Taylor and his mother just 2 days before the wedding. Lisa had given a home address in Silverbrook. Detective Lopez faced Linda, Robert, and Jason in a small meeting room. "We have your suspect," she said. "We know who hired Monroe." Linda's heart pounded. She felt a swirl of anger, relief, and sadness. Her son's bride's mother had orchestrated every attack. She looked at her family. Robert squeezed her hand. "We finish this tomorrow," she said. That night, they gathered in the living room for one last strategy session. Detective Lopez laid out the plan. They would obtain a search warrant for Lisa Taylor's home in Suncrest Meadows. They would seize her phone records, bank records, and any evidence. They would arrest her and present Monroe's testimony. That would bring the case crashing down on the Taylors. Linda sat forward. Will there be danger? She remembered the gunman in the office, the storm of rocks, the fire, the powder. Detective Lopez nodded solemnly. They have resources. They may try to flee or hide evidence. We need to act fast. They decided to strike at first light. Linda would not attend to protect her family, but she would watch from a safe location. Jason and Daniel would stay with friends under police watch. Robert would join the detective team. When morning came, the sky was clear and crisp. Robert and Detective Lopez led a convoy of marked cars to Suncrest Meadows. It was an exclusive area of large homes with manicured lawns and stone walls. Lisa Taylor's house was a grand two-story with tall columns and a circular driveway. A black sedan sat parked outside. Officers surrounded the property. Detective Lopez knocked on the front door and announced the warrant. Lisa's voice answered, "Who is it?" Lopez read the warrant. The door clicked open, and Lisa stood there in silk pajamas, her hair in a neat bun. She looked calm. "Mrs. Taylor, you're under arrest for conspiracy to assault and harass the Miller family," Detective Lopez said. Lisa's eyes widened, then hardened. She turned and walked inside. Officers followed. They found her on the living room sofa, her phone, and a stack of envelopes on the coffee table. The envelopes were the same size overs as those Linda kept in her tin can. They bore Lisa's handwriting. Officers cuffed Lisa and led her outside. She spoke calmly, addressing reporters who had gathered. "I did what any mother would do to protect her daughter," she said. "I regret if anyone was harmed." Her voice was cold. Linda watched the live news feed on her phone. She felt a strange mixture of victory and sorrow. The woman who had caused so much pain now faced the law. She thought of Anna, her son's bride, and wondered how her daughter-in-law would react. The next day, papers began to circulate about the arrests. Monroe pleaded guilty to his crimes and agreed to testify against Lisa and Anna. Lisa was held on bail. Anna, grappling with the scandal, withdrew from public view. Jason's wedding was postponed indefinitely. He texted his mother, "I'm so sorry this happened." Linda replied, "We will heal together." At home, Linda gathered the family. They sat in the living room, the red tin can on the coffee table, now polished and proud. Detective Lopez came over with a final report. With the evidence, prosecutors will pursue charges against Mrs. Taylor. Anna could face charges too if she conspired, but that's up to the district attorney. Linda nodded. She looked at Robert, Jason, and Daniel. "We did it," she said quietly. "We stood strong." They embraced, tears of relief and exhaustion flowing. For the next week, life slowly began to return to normal. Linda returned to work. Greeted by hugs from the children, she helped at the school. Robert resumed his business trips, now confident his home was safe. Jason and Anna spoke on the phone, working through their pain. Daniel returned to soccer practice, scoring a goal and smiling again. But one morning, Linda found an email from an anonymous sender with no subject. Curious, she opened it. Inside was a single photo, the red tin can, dented but shining, placed on a pedestal of black marble. Behind it stood a dark figure in a suit, one hand resting on the tin. The caption read, "This is only the beginning." Linda's blood ran cold. She slammed her laptop shut and looked at the tin can on her mantel. Its metal surface reflected the morning light. She felt a chill. Though they had won the battle against the Taylors, a new enemy had appeared, one with deeper power and a darker purpose. She turned to Robert. Her voice was steady but fierce. "They have plans beyond Silverbrook," she said. "We must be ready." He nodded, eyes grim. "We will be." Thunder rumbled in the distance, the same as before but louder, closer. In that rumble, Linda heard promise. The war was not over. And as she touched the tin can, she knew she would protect her family no matter what came next. An anonymous photo hinted at a new, unseen enemy waiting in the shadows as thunder rolled overhead, promising the fight was far from finished.